Salt of the Earth Farm Stories is proudly brought to you by Grig Media. Step into the world of farmers from diverse backgrounds across Australia. Through intimate interviews, host Darren Grigg delves into farming practices, traditions, and the challenges farmers face in nurturing the land.
I'm your host, Darren Grigg, and we're continuing our chat with the incredible Lincoln Budge, who, despite being paralysed from the waist down in his early 20s, is out there farming from a wheelchair. Yes, you heard right, Lincoln is an absolute legend and a huge advocate for people with disabilities, showing that nothing should hold you back from chasing your dreams. Today, we talk about the challenges he faces, the possible skepticism from the farming community, and that time he got a tractor stuck and had to commando crawl across the paddock. We also dive into how he pushes through doubt and finds motivation every day. So let's kick it off with Lincoln answering, what's the biggest challenge of farming from a wheelchair? Let's get into it.
Biggest challenge is probably the actual physical cattle work when you need to get them in the yards, or if you got a cow that's calving that needs pulling and things like that. That's when I need the most support. Like I physically can't do that stuff, and it's not safe to try and do some of that. That's probably the biggest challenge, needing people around to support in that area. So yeah, that'd be my biggest challenge for sure.
Well, I'm only half an hour away. If you ever need a hand, mate, I'll be here in a flash to help you.
Thank you.
Have you ever faced skepticism from others in the farming community?
Yeah, you always get assumptions and comments that people thinking you can't do anything or you mustn't do anything and stuff like that. Doesn't really bother me. The thing I like about farming is I can come up here to the farm and just do my own thing when no one sees what I'm doing, and I enjoy that, because when you're sometimes doing things and people are watching you, they assume you can't get out and open the gate. They assume you can't do these things and make out that you need them to help. Whereas sometimes it's nicer just doing stuff without anyone, and you do it all yourself until things go wrong.
Yeah.
Which it has sometimes, but like if you get bogged or something like that. But there's been times where I've got bogged and I've had to get the wheelchair out, push back, get another vehicle. And it happened one time in particular. It happened with my side-by-side on a lease property I had, and I had to go back up with the car and trailer, pull it out, and then once I got it out of the bog, I loaded the side-by-side on the trailer and towed it back down instead of having to push back up the hill to get all the vehicles out. And I was in a bit of a rush at night because I was going out for dinner. But yeah, I lost, I don't know, an hour and a half probably messing around there. And it was all because I was just trying to spray a few last blackberries before going out for dinner.
Pushing the boundaries.
But yeah, just got stuck in a spot that was a little bit wet. And there have been times where I've had to call on people to come and help. But that also happens with able-bodied people.
Absolutely.
If you get, sometimes you just can't drive enough vehicles at once. So it can go pear-shaped. I try and plan that I've got a way out if I'm by myself, that I'm not ever going to get completely stranded.
Yeah.
Probably the worst one I had was getting the tractor stuck when I was seeding one time. I got jammed up on a stump. I didn't have the wheelchair in the tractor with me. So I had a look across the paddock. I'm like, oh, it's not that far back to the wheelchair. So I climbed out and started commando crawling back to the wheelchair. I didn't realise how hard it was and how far it was once I actually started doing it. And once I got back to the wheelchair, I barely had energy to lift myself from the ground up into the wheelchair. But I managed. I got out, and I did have brother was coming that day, but I just didn't want to wait. So that was probably the worst one I've had.
What advice would you give to others with disabilities and them wanting to farm?
Just do it. Just don't be afraid to have a go. Just look outside the box and don't see limitations, just see if there's something you can't do, look at what you can change so you can do it. Like most things, whether it's adapting machinery, changing layout of paddocks, things like that to make life easier, but just not being afraid to have a go, and don't worry if people think you can't do something. Just do it and get people around you that support you in what you want to do, and you'll succeed. I've got friends, there's a Canadian guy, he was born with no arms and no legs, and he was brought up in a farming community in Canada. He drives harvesters.
Serious?
And yeah, he crawls up. He's got a little stump on one side, like leg stump, and his arms are about elbow length, but he's able to climb up into the harvesters, and he doesn't have any modifications on them, and he still works on the farm and does harvesting and
Wow.
and everything. So
A big cropping farm.
yeah, so cropping over there, and he travels the world and presents and does a lot of public speaking and stuff these days. And last time I spoke to him when he was in Australia, he was coming back to run a harvester over in WA.
Oh, good.
So yeah, it's
with no modifications.
Yeah, no modifications. With his stumps on his arms, like elbow length, he's able to press buttons and pull levers and do everything he needs to do, and steer and whatever. So yeah, he's right into the bigger cropping sort of side of farming. Yeah, still gets around it.
What a champion.
So it is possible to do a lot of things. You just need to be willing to have a go and have people around you that are willing to support you as well in doing those things.
What do you think people most misunderstand about farming with a disability?
What you can actually do, that you can still do a lot. There's so much you can do. I think a lot of people tend to think that on the farm I just am a part owner and don't actually do much. And because I suppose I don't go around telling everyone what I do and that I just sort of do what I do. People don't see it. And that's why doing some of these podcasts and stuff is good to show other people with disabilities and even just other farmers and stuff what is achievable.
Because it's not just being physically disabled, is it? There's a lot of other complications, aren't there?
Yeah, the physical being in a wheelchair is probably the easy part of the disability. That's the part everyone sees and knows. It's all the other stuff that goes along with it, all your internal functions, your bowel function, bladder function, sexual function, skin care, pressure sores, the fact you can't feel your legs so you can injure them. Early days I was moving some cattle and stuff, and I had my foot tied onto the peg on the four-wheeler, and I was checking to make sure I wasn't burning my legs or anything, not realising just above my shoe my skin was basically sitting on an exhaust bolt. And it wasn't until that night when I got in bed and pulled my socks off, and well, it wasn't even a blister anymore. The blister had popped, so it had just burnt right in on my ankle. So I had this huge burn on the side of my leg. I was on the four-wheeler for probably 2 hours, burning my leg. So just things like that you've got to be aware of that go along with the disability. And then that was a long recovery from that too. So yeah, the wheelchair itself is kind of the easy and the visible part, but managing everything else safely too, like you do have to look after it, because when you get an injury like that, like you then got a wound that you got to dress, it's time consuming, but then the risk of infection and things like that are quite high. And I've had a few skin infections and things from those kind of injuries as well. So all that stuff is actually probably more time consuming to manage than being in a wheelchair.
Well, you've been pretty determined to be independent, but I believe you're married to a very special person. Can you tell me about her?
Not married, but my partner, Lauren, she's a GP, rural generalist. So she works in Mount Beauty, but at the moment is doing some locum work around Australia as well. And yeah, she loves getting on the farm. I do joke sometimes that she'd be more useful as a vet than a doctor. But her medical knowledge is definitely handy on the farm sometimes too with the cattle.
Yeah.
Because humans and cattle aren't that different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very similar.
And she's great support.
Yeah, she's great support. She loves coming to the farm, spending time here and getting involved, and yeah, just supportive of everything I do as well.
Awesome. How important is technology in making farming accessible for people with a disability?
I think it's making it easier. Like machinery is getting easier to drive because there's more electronics and stuff. Things like solar gates, like I mentioned, and the other one I was sort of pretty keen to sort of look into more are drones in agriculture at the moment. I think they've really got a future. For someone that's in a wheelchair, there's nothing stopping me from being able to fly a drone and operate that. And as far as filling it up and all those things, like, yeah, maybe you just set up things a little bit differently on a trailer or whatever so you can operate it easily. But I don't see why more people in wheelchairs can't get into operating things like that and be involved in ag more.
So you could be fertilising paddocks or spraying some blackberries deep in the galley from the drone.
Yeah, places where I can't physically access, and even able-bodied people can't physically access sometimes. Really, when you start looking at some of that stuff, there's no, like an able-bodied person's not necessarily going to operate a drone any better than someone with a disability.
That's right.
Like, there's a lot of things I do where I'm slower at doing things than an able-bodied person, but with technology and things like drones, I think you're just as efficient as an able-body. You just probably have to look at setting up things so that you can refill your fertilisers and things without having to climb on anything. But it's just having smart planning and setting up all your equipment so that it just works for you.
Has farming in a wheelchair shaped your personal growth?
It definitely has. Everything you do, I think, shapes your personal growth. Definitely since COVID, it's shaped me a lot more. I've become more involved in the farm since COVID because a lot of other things I was doing, I couldn't do the presentations of wheelchair basketball and ski racing had ended by then. And so I got a lot more involved in the farming side of things because it was something that was still operating during COVID.
That's right, it didn't stop, did it?
So I was pretty lucky having that as an outlet, but as an option to just go down that path. So yeah, the last few years has definitely shaped me a lot around farming and what I can do and those kind of things.
Have you faced moments of doubt and how did you push through?
I think everyone always has doubt, whether you got a disability or not. You got doubt, whether it's around physical or finances or even mental health and stuff. So yes, I've had doubts, but I just enjoy what I do, so I keep doing it. I enjoy farming. I enjoy even just being here, like sitting here looking out here, not doing anything is nice.
There's something about nature and mental health, isn't there?
Yeah, just getting out, just having the birds around, no other people or vehicles or anything. So I think, yeah, just stepping back, looking at how lucky I am to live where I live, have what I have, yeah, really sort of just gives you that motivation to keep doing what you're doing because it's a great part of the world where we are. It's a great block of land and yeah, it's just nice.
Absolutely, it is. What are your goals for the future of your farm and your advocacy work?
I'd like to expand the farm a little bit more. We can expand without creating much more work.
Yeah.
It's at a size where, yeah, could add to it. Just, yeah, making that happen can be difficult sometimes. Potentially buying some more land or leasing some more property just to expand the operation so we can carry more cattle and have a few more options as far as rotations and those kind of things, and just build that herd up a little bit bigger. So yeah, it'd be nice to do that. The last couple of years I've been busy working up at Falls Creek as well, and I was sort of going back into the presentations and wheelchair basketball stuff more. So yeah, just want to expand that and travel more with that, and probably promote more farming with disability stuff as well. I've always sort of had a dream of sort of having like almost a farm stay to support people with disabilities, show them what is achievable, and just show them different pieces of equipment I've got. And one day, possibly, if I'm able to expand the farm or buy a farm that has some accommodation on it or something, to be able to do that kind of thing, I'd love to sort of support other people with disabilities into that space as well.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Are there any projects that you're particularly excited about here on the farm?
Yeah, the Neckmar one, as you mentioned, that gully, there's another section to that. So I sort of want to finish that at some stage. The worm farmers, as you mentioned, and just some of the infrastructure around all that. Sort of excited to sort of get all that happening and work towards a more organic sort of operation.
And if you could change one thing in farming to improve accessibility, what would it be? And you may have already answered it earlier.
Probably people's attitudes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find the most restricting thing in all aspects of having a disability is other people's perceptions of what you can do and expectations, and that can really make it difficult sometimes to get into things. People don't take you seriously and stuff, like even when you're buying equipment and stuff, sometimes people just don't give you the time and take you seriously.
There's all these hurdles that we don't think about.
Yeah, so that can be more restrictive than anything sometimes. But that's why I do these presentations. If young kids are exposed to someone with disability growing up, that they've seen it. Like, I never saw anyone with a disability as a kid, so I never had exposure to that. Whereas, yeah, if me and other people can do these kind of presentations and get the exposure and show that we're out doing things. Like, I got heaps of mates in wheelchairs doing all sorts of different things, and yeah, people, they're not necessarily out there telling everyone what they're doing because they're just getting on with life, doing what they're doing. But yeah, I think it is important to also share that to the community so that we do change people's attitudes and that around disabilities, that we can be contributing members of society, as most people in wheelchairs are.
Big time.
Yeah, as I said, got friends doing all sorts of things, fruiterers, jewellers,
Really?
Farmers, yeah, all sorts of things, working in the banking sector, all that kind of stuff. Like, really, they do anything, even earth moving.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, Lincoln, it's time for some off-the-wall questions. These are just short answers, and you can answer as many as you like. What is your favourite tool or piece of machinery here on the farm?
Probably the tractor. I enjoy driving the tractor. It's big and fun.
Powerful.
Powerful. That's probably, yeah, I enjoy operating the tractor.
And you can get a lot of work done with a tractor.
Yeah, it feels rewarding. Like, and it's versatile. Like, you can be feeding cattle, or you can be ploughing paddocks or seeding paddocks or whatever. Like, there's a lot of things, even using the front end loader, moving dirt, moving whatever. Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing that's happened to you while farming in a wheelchair? You may have already mentioned it before. I was trying to picture you commando crawling up the hill.
Yeah, that's probably one of the weirdest or hardest things. The other one was when my wheelchair got ran over. I was in the tractor, and Mum actually ran the wheelchair over and got caught under the Hilux.
Oh, where were you? You were in the tractor.
I was in the tractor, and so that was a bit of a mission to work out what I was going to do, because I had a spare chair back at home, back in Mount Beauty, but that's an hour's drive away. I had a friend, because I was a boilermaker by trade before my disability and everything. I had a friend rang up, and he came around, and we put the wheelchair under the front end loader and levered it back straight, got the crowbar onto it. Both wheels were smashed, but I happened to have a couple of spare wheels at the farm here, had flat tyres and everything, but they were round, so I didn't care. So yeah, that was a bit of a mission, but we got the chair pretty straight. Like as a Boilermaker, mate's got skills, and he got straight, and I kept using that wheelchair for about 18 months.
Did you?
Yeah, before I got it replaced.
If you could swap places with any animal on the farm for a day, which one would it be?
Any animal.
Could be your dog too.
I wouldn't want to be my older dog
No?
at the moment.
No.
She's only got 3 legs.
Is that the one going through chemo too?
Yeah. No, I reckon the bulls have a pretty good life.
Yeah. Well, they're making a bit of noise there before.
Yeah, they just plod around. They've got it pretty easy. They've only got one job, and they don't do that all that often.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of girlfriends.
Yeah.
What's the one farm chore you secretly enjoy the most, even if it's a bit unexpected?
Probably just feeding the cattle. Just particularly when the cows are calving or finished calving, just driving around in the tractor, feeding them, and just looking at all the young calves and fresh ones. They're kind of cute. And
absolutely.
You can see what the whole operation is about, and that's what we're doing. So yeah, it's nice just sort of driving around and taking the time when you've got the time to just sort of enjoy that moment.
And there's something about when you put them into a fresh paddock too, you can just sit and watch them for ages.
Yeah, just they're so happy, and just seeing them munching on a fresh paddock's pretty nice too.
What's the most out of the box or creative solution you've come up with to solve a farming problem?
For me, with my disability, it was probably when I first came home from rehab, and it was bolting a piece of steel onto the gear shifter on the 4-wheeler so that I could change the gears.
Oh yeah.
I've got an automatic 4-wheeler now, but back then we just had a manual one, and I just got a piece of rod and a hose clamp and clamped it onto the gear shifter so I could reach it and change gears.
Creative.
So that was one of the early adaptations I made just to get back doing things.
Well done. What's the strangest thing you've learned about yourself since you started farming in a wheelchair?
Strangest thing is probably when you're pushed what you can actually do and what you achieve. I don't know whether that's strange, but just, when you're under the pump and things just have to be done and you don't have any other choice, what you can actually get done.
Yeah.
Whether it's Commander crawling across a paddock or
still picturing that.
Or getting a wheelchair through a cattle yard full of cow poo or whatever. You get it done when you have to. You don't necessarily choose to do it.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten from a fellow farmer? Someone that's in a wheelchair or not?
Probably just to focus on the things you can do now. Like when you look at a whole farming operation and everything you want to do and achieve, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you can't achieve it all when you want to achieve it. But just focus on 1 or 2 things you can do this week, this month, or this year. And I guess that just comes down to sort of short-term and long-term planning. But just work on what you can get done now.
Yeah.
And then get to the other stuff.
I guess planning does play a big role for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've got to think a lot more about just day to day, which gates I'm going to go through, and sort of what work I can get done and when I can get it done. So.
And if your farm could talk, what would it say to you?
Oh. I don't know whether I could repeat what. Nah, I think the farm would say we're doing an all right job. We're making some improvements.
You are.
I think we've got a long way to go. I was thinking to say, come on, pull your socks up. But from when we first had it, we'll leave the land in a better state than when we started.
Well, that might answer the next question. I was going to say, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, I think just making improvements both for the farm and the environment.
Yeah.
As you mentioned earlier, the water being healthier when it leaves this property and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
What time of the day do you get your best work done?
in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Although everything I plan to do in the morning generally ends up pushing out to the afternoon. Yeah.
And mates, if you could give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would you say?
Or 18-year-old self, enjoy your time, but make some better choices, or make smart choices, sensible choices.
Thank you. Can you tell me about one or two most influential people in your life and how they've impacted you?
There's a couple of people. One is Pete, who helped me get sober. So much of what I've done just in life in general, disability aside, I don't think I'd be where I am had I not gone through the work I did with Pete, and even him just opening himself up and making him available, and that to me. So he's had a huge impact on my life and the path I've taken through that. The other person would be Granddad growing up.
Yeah.
Granddad, he was a fitter and turner and lived on the corner of the property we grew up on. Spent a lot of time in the workshop with him, learning how to do a lot on the lathe and welding and different things. And obviously I went into a trade, metal-based trade as a boilermaker. So yeah, he was a big influence growing up too. Sort of didn't really have a father around much.
Right.
He was sort of around, but not really. So yeah, having Granddad so close to home and that was, yeah, big impact on my life.
Yeah.
And the path I took career-wise and everything.
Your grandfather's not around now?
Nah, he passed away when I was 20, I think.
Right. Just before your accident?
Yeah, so I had 3 birthdays in a row. I had Granddad's funeral on my 20th, motorbike accident on the 21st, and then spinal injury 22.
Oh, what a time.
So yeah.
Now, if you could have a cuppa with someone, with anyone in the world, who would you choose?
It'd probably be Granddad.
Yeah,
If I could go back and, yeah.
Well, he'd be proud of you, mate. I know that.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know whether he'd be proud of a few things I've done, but overall, hopefully he'd be proud of me.
And if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I think here. Like, I've travelled and ski raced around the world and been to some amazing ski resorts and some amazing places. I do love living in the snow line, as difficult as it is in a wheelchair. It is great, but whenever I come home after a long trip and sort of come back into northeast Victoria, you just look around and you just go, we live in a pretty good part of the world. We've got access to snow in winter, we got great scenery, we got lakes, we got rivers, we got water skiing, sort of got access to everything and great lifestyle. So yeah, I think here.
Well said, mate. Well, Lincoln, you've truly shown us that with determination, creativity, and a little bit of humour, anything is possible, even farming from a wheelchair. Your story is not just one of resilience, but of inspiring us all to push the boundaries, embrace challenges, and never underestimate what we're capable of. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. You're a true trailblazer in every sense of the word, and we can't wait to see what you accomplish next. Keep shining, keep inspiring, and thanks for being such a positive force on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Put it in, mate. Bloody awesome. Well done.
Salt of the Earth Farm Stories is proudly brought to you by Grig Media.